Hi, I'm Bob Mould, and you are listening to WMNF, Tampa 88.5 FM.
Hi, this is Miss Julie. Our week-long fall membership drive begins at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, October 8th, and goes through 9 a.m. on October 15th. We're seeking volunteers to help take pledge and donation calls and food donors to help feed our hungry and hard-working volunteers. Restaurants, caterers, or chefs can find out more about donating drinks, snacks, or full meals by calling me at 813-238-8001 or email missjulie@wmnf.org. I can also help get you registered to volunteer. Just be in touch. Thanks.
Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, I say it's all right.
Hello and welcome to the Sustainable Living Show here on WMNF Tampa 88.5, where every Monday at 11 we bring you a conversation with local experts on sustainable issues. I do want to say a quick and heartfelt thank you to everybody who was able to donate to our short notice fundraiser recently. You really do make all of this continue to be possible, so thank you. Today we are talking about intentional communities with Cynthia Tina. Don't know what that is? Stick around for the next hour to find out. Sarah is taking your phone calls, and the marvelous Mr. Bill Grace is working the boards. I am Tanja Vidovic, your host for today. Before we do get into our main program, Kitty Wallace has a couple events to tell you about.
Hi, good morning, Tanya. How's everything with you?
Oh, good. Thank you, Kitty.
Great.
How are you?
Well, there are a few events besides trying to stay in the garden during just the cool hours of the day. We do have a couple gardens doing some things. There's a seed starting party at the Clearwater Community Garden coming up this Saturday, August 2nd at 5:30. It'll be time to learn all about how to start your seeds for your fall garden. And they will also have some plants for sale. That would be at 1277 Grove Street in Clearwater. And then on the other side of our region, the Keel Farms are having something every night this week. They've got trivia night. They've got jukebox bingo night. They've got line dancing night. So if you're on the east side of Hillsborough County, the Keel Farm is a great place to go. I also want to mention one more thing. The Sustainable Urban Agriculture Coalition is hosting a not back to school, but back to the garden party. Let me tell you more about that. They're doing this at the Enoch Davis Center, and this will be Friday night at 5:30, I believe. They're going to be having some speakers talk about the school gardens, and they're specifically asking for teachers who have school gardens at their school to come out this Friday night to the Sustainable Urban Agriculture meeting, events from the garden. And I say back to the garden will be a potluck, vegan potluck, and they'll have some special activities for teachers who are currently at school gardens. So that will be this Friday from 5 o'clock at Enoch Davis Center in St. Pete.
Awesome.
So fun stuff. All right. Have a great program. I'm looking forward to learning all about intentional communities. Thanks, Tanya.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Kitty, for calling in. I appreciate it. So I would like to welcome today's guest, Cynthia Tina. And so, Cynthia, hi.
Hi, Tanya. Great to be here. Thank you for having me back on the Sustainable Living Show. Excited.
No, we're so happy to have you here. And so Cynthia helps people discover intentional community living for better housing, health, and happiness. Cynthia is the founder of Community Finders, where she offers programs to help people find their community. She is also the founder of Eco Village Tours, which offers guided trips to intentional communities worldwide. Welcome to the Sustainable Living Show.
Thank you so much.
So we had you on a couple of years ago, but those who didn't get to listen to that program, what is an intentional community?
Yeah, so an intentional community is really an umbrella term to describe many different ways that people are choosing to live together or regularly share facilities, on the basis of explicit common values. So maybe you have in your mind, okay, there's like a retirement community. I know you have a lot of them there in Florida. That's one version of more connected living, but are there the shared values? Is there the shared ownership in those communities? And how can we live in these more connected ways? And it's amazing how many communities there are in the world. I've been very fortunate to have traveled and visited around 200 intentional communities worldwide, and I live in one here in Vermont.
Yeah. So after visiting 200 intentional communities, the one in Vermont must feel pretty special to have you choose them. Is there a reason why that one just drew you in?
Yeah, so we are a small eco village. We're about 8 households on 15 acres. Especially this time of year, beautiful gardens, a lot of food production. We have ponds and chickens, a lot of families with young kids. And it just felt like this peaceful, supportive place for me to live and hopefully someday raise a family and myself. It's also pretty close to where my parents have retired here in Vermont. And I've been coming to this region for a long time. So the land really was like speaking to me as where I would eventually.
Felt like home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that, especially with your parents being close by and everything. Sometimes places just feel like home pretty quickly. So that's awesome that you found that. And so you mentioned, the food production and chickens and everything. Does this intentional community, because I know that a lot of them kind of work together in farmers markets and they have like a plan, like we're going to make jam and sell it. Do you all have something like that?
Yeah, we don't have a business as a community. Obviously, when we talk about intentional communities, it's a big, wide spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you have more of the high-end eco-village, gated community, amazing place to live, but people are quite separate in terms of their financial arrangements, especially. And then there's this continuum all the way to what you might imagine stereotypically as the intentional community, hippie commune off in the woods. People really are sharing their finances, starting cottage industries, doing life in a very communal way. I would say though most communities fall somewhere in the middle of those two extremes, and my community is right there in the middle as well. So we have gardens that we share. We have some tools that we share, a lawnmower, a tractor. We are a fairly rural community, but in terms of our home finances and businesses, those are all separate or on an individual basis.
And so what first drew you to the idea of intentional communities? Because it's not something that I really was even aware of probably until my mid-30s.
Yeah. So I'm sure people listening to this show, Sustainable Living Show, are very curious about ways that we can live more sustainably. Growing more of your own food, composting your food, reducing your electrical usage, all of these different things. And I myself was really passionate about those topics. And I think for me, growing up in a suburban neighborhood with a very mainstream family outside of Boston, I didn't necessarily find others who shared my values and my interests, especially at a young age, and was curious, like, where are my people? Where are people who are living a lifestyle that I also want to live? And I want to collaborate with those people. I want to have them in my lives. I want to be friends. I want to be neighbors. And so that was my draw to intentional communities as I slowly began to learn about them and get to travel and visit some established ones, be part of forming a few, living in longer stints in several ones, and then ultimately joining the community where I now live in Vermont. So I think it was really this desire to explore other ways of living other than just the mainstream, get a job, find a home on the real estate market somewhere, live in a community where you may or may not know your neighbors.
Or like your neighbors.
Yeah, or like them, never get along. Yeah. So I really was wanting something more intentional.
I mean, it sounds dreamy. And so, it's funny because when I mention intentional communities, people either don't know what they are or think that, like you said, a hippie commune or an environmental cult. Um, so how would it differ from like that sort of mentality? But then also, how is it different than like a regular HOA or, like you mentioned, a retirement community?
Yeah, it's different in a few ways. And I think what it comes down to is what I had shared at the beginning, having really clear common values. So typically, when an intentional community starts, either the founding group gets together and says, okay, we want to start a community. What are our values? What's our mission, our vision? How are we going to make agreements together in a participatory way so all the voices are heard? How are we going to manage our finances, govern ourselves, resolve conflict? How do we decide on who joins the community and who is a good fit? So all of those different pieces then lead into the creation of a community that then future members can say, oh, that is the identity of this community. That's their vision. That really resonates with me. I want to join. Or, it's not a fit. I don't want to join. So it's not at all, this is sometimes people are afraid of like a cults type situation or coercion. We're not talking about that. And we're not talking about an HOA, even though many communities utilize that legal structure. Actually, the community where I live, we are technically a homeowners association, an HOA, but we don't look anything like a normal HOA. We don't have outside management. We don't have like a board of directors that's making all the decisions. We really have this more collective participatory way of self-governance and self-management.
Yeah, and then you mentioned a few things. So like the mission and the vision, and how do you see like a stream of ideas where like some single vision or mission that's important to all of the intentional communities, or do they just vary a lot going from one to the next?
Yeah, you can have communities that are more focused on the sustainability side, more focused on homesteading and living off the land. You can have communities that are very urban and more activist focused or arts focused or focused on spirituality. So it really is a whole diversity of different focuses. I would say, though, at this time that we're living in, with so many overlapping crises, I really feel like intentional communities sit at this place of being an answer to many of them. And first that comes to mind is the loneliness crisis, which even before the COVID pandemic, we had this crazy loneliness crisis. Now it's getting to the point where I believe 1 in 2 American adults report feeling lonely on a regular basis. That has serious implications for our mental and physical health, well-being. So intentional communities, almost regardless of their focus or mission, they're going to be fostering a deeper level of social connection. Most of them are going to be in some way more supportive of an environmentally conscious way of living and infrastructure design. And then the last piece there is housing accessibility, because we do live right now with this crazy housing crisis, so unaffordable to attain housing, and a lot of intentional communities are working that angle as well.
You were listening to the Sustainable Living Show, broadcasting live from the studios of WMNF Tampa. Our guest today is Cynthia Tina, talking about intentional communities. If you have a question, give us a call. 813-239-9663. Text us at 813-433-0885 or send me an email, dj@wmnf.org, and I'll read it on the air. So you have it's almost like a matchmaking quiz to start people's journey to see if there's an intentional community that they might want to join. Can you tell me about what that is and why you started it?
Oh, I'm so happy you're mentioning the quiz. It's a lot of fun. A lot of people enjoy taking it just to see, well, if I were to join a community, what type would be a fit for me? Am I more of the eco-villager? Am I more of somebody who wants to live in a co-housing neighborhood, just wants more of that old-fashioned neighborhood social connection? Do I want a tiny house village? Do I want something more radical? And this quiz is just a few questions. And at the end, you can get a result of which type of a community is a fit for you. And the quiz can be accessed at communityfinders.com/quiz. So Community Finders is the organization that I do some community matchmaking work with folks who want recommendations for specific communities they can join, as well as a bunch of free blog articles, group programs, courses, and such.
And so if somebody takes this quiz and finds a few that they might be interested in, do you also have a resource where you help them like plan visits? Like, do all of these intentional communities allow people to come and visit and stay and see if it would be a good match, or is it more invite only?
If a community has openings for new members or has some sort of mission around education, hospitality, yes, you can go visit. And of course, keep in mind you're visiting people's private homes, so always make sure it's well communicated that you're going to visit a place, never just show up. And at the same time, I get that it can be a little difficult to navigate. Well, how do I visit? Who do I contact? You know, how do I see a diversity of communities? And that's why I created Eco Village Tours. So we are a travel company bringing small groups on trips to visit intentional communities worldwide. I just got back yesterday from leading an 8-day tour visiting communities throughout Vermont.
Are you like driving in a bus, or are people taking their own cars, or are you literally like hopping on a plane, like traveling the world together?
No, it's regionally specific trips. So,
Okay.
you'll go to, in my case, if you came on our Vermont trip, you arrive in Burlington. We arrange all of the transportation, the meals, accommodation, and activities over the days. So it's an all-inclusive trip. And each day we visit a different intentional community. And it's amazing how people come on these trips to see the communities, but then they end up feeling like they've been part of a community through the traveling group and the connections that are formed, deep connections between people who were just a few days prior strangers. And we're offering trips in the United States, also Europe, Costa Rica, India, Bali, all over, really international.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's kind of intentional communities all over. And so you mentioned like one of the things is the loneliness crisis. And it's I swear with every group I'm in, it's something that is mentioned in everyone. It's like, oh, mothers are so lonely. Oh, gardeners are so lonely. Artists, we're by yourself and lonely. It just seems like it's like this constantly occurring topic that people are lonely and they're trying to find that sort of connection. So how do you think that intentional communities help with that? Do they have like group projects or, a way to have that connection?
Isn't it amazing how in this digital age, when we're all like plugged in with our phones and supposed to be hyper connected, we feel the most lonely and isolated? Which, if you think about our evolution as a human species, we evolved in these tight-knit social circles with people around us who we knew deeply, who we trusted. Most of the kids were raised in the village setting. And so many of us don't have that these days. We're highly transient. A lot of us work remotely. We may have a few friends here and there, but everyone's so busy. You have to kind of like schedule and coordinate and plan to meet up.
I feel that. All the people I really want to hang out with, we don't have time for each other, and it's so sad.
I know. But then imagine if those people you wanted to hang out with lived right Sure. Yeah. And then you can just casually interact with them when you're, opening your door and walking to your car. You can wave hi to somebody. You can have a quick moment of catch up. Sometimes that's all we really need to feel more connected with each
Yeah.
other and with the place where we live. So, communities support each other in big ways, but I often think the magic is in the small daily interactions we get to have with each other.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's the small interactions, the small happy ones of seeing someone that you wanted to see, even if it's just for a short moment. I feel like you're right about that. And so you mentioned something about resolving conflict. So, and having that be a part of, like, not the mission, but a part of the guidelines. So is there a specific way of like mediation that you all use or that you see often?
Yes, like we've been saying, we want to live with people who we like. Well, sometimes you don't like the people, but you still live in community with them, or you disagree with them on a particular issue, or whatever it may be. Conflict happens in community, it is inevitable. And rather than thinking of it as a bad thing or something to avoid, we try to think of it as something that can be helpful for learning about ourselves, for personal growth, for connecting more deeply, perhaps, with our neighbor who we don't get along with. So, yes, most established intentional communities have a conflict resolution policy, usually an escalating step-by-step procedure for if tensions brew with somebody, here's what you do. I would say, in addition to that, most intentional communities are really focused on creating a culture of more authentic communication, nonviolent communication, if folks are familiar with that term and that concept, really a culture where there's skill building around how to be cooperative. And most of us don't learn that stuff in school. It's really something that we need to put extra attention to shift away from the individualistic, competitive, consumeristic mindset that we have in mainstream culture into a more cooperative community way of life.
Yeah, and that's all great points. And so, are there certain tasks that are often assigned to people? Like, this person is in charge of the sheep, and then this person is in charge of road maintenance or the garden. Is there normally that sort of like, I don't know what the word would be, like, it's not a job really, but it's a responsibility? Or is it kind of like today's road day and we're all getting out there?
Every community is completely different in terms of how they divvy up the labor that needs to be done to keep the space beautiful and do maintenance. I would say most intentional communities are really proud of the fact that they try to do as much of it themselves as they can before they hire outside help. So for a lot of communities, that may look like one day a month, we're all going to have a community work party. We're all going to get out in the garden. We're all going to clean the windows or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
In my community, we also have a weekly chore rotation, especially for the chickens, because they require obviously daily care. And I love having chickens. And I know myself with my work schedule, my travel schedule, there's no way I could do it on my own. But I don't need to. I have my neighbors. So all I need to focus on is every Thursday. That's my day to water the chickens, collect the eggs, make sure they're happy. If I'm traveling, somebody else can cover my day. I cover days for other people. And then we all get to enjoy these wonderful eggs.
Yeah. And so for the listeners, or speaking of which, you are listening to the Sustainable Living Show, broadcasting live from the studios of WMNF Tampa. Our guest today is Cynthia Tina, talking about intentional communities. If you have a question, give us a call at 813-239-9663. Text us at 813-433-0885, or send us an email, dj@wmnf.org, and I'll read it on air. We actually do have a caller, John. Is it John Butts?
Yeah, this is me. How you doing, Tom?
Hey, John, thanks for calling in. You got the mic.
And hi to Cynthia. I was just kind of wondering you say you traveled the world and kind of went to different countries and saw communities. I wonder where the most communities were, like intentional communities. Is there any country or that kind of stands out as the place where people kind of look at this as a very meaningful way of life?
Ooh, great question, John. And there are several countries that come to mind, the first of which is Denmark. So Denmark is considered the birthplace of the co-housing movement. And sometimes when people hear the term co-housing, they think people sharing a house together. That's not what co-housing means. It's a form of housing development where individuals own their private dwelling, their own kitchen, their own bathroom, but they have access to shared facilities, usually a big common kitchen, play space for the kids, shared parking. And this model is really prevalent throughout the small country of Denmark, 100 plus different co-housing communities. And the term co-housing was coined by two architects who traveled to Denmark in the 70s, Charles Durrett and Katie McCammett. And they said, well, wait, what is this new form of housing everyone's doing here in Denmark? Let's call it co-housing. They took the concept back to the United States, and now there's more than 200 established co-housing communities in the US. So this is a form of community that is based on home ownership, so can be standard market rate to live in. But yet you get so much more for your dollar, obviously, with all those shared amenities and community support. So that's one country. The other country that comes to mind is Costa Rica. We're actually running 4 eco-village tours in the months of January, February, March, and April in this winter 2026, because there are 50 plus different communities throughout Costa Rica. We're really just visiting a selection of some of the best ones. And Costa Rica, I think for many people who are feeling a bit disparaging about the situation in the US and maybe thinking, oh, maybe I want to go somewhere else, that's really becoming a haven for expat intentional communities and eco-villages.
Cool. I guess that those two countries are no surprise that they are. And I've always my next show I was planning on doing it on affordable housing, but I really scratched my head. But the model of the Denmark kind of deal is kind of like in certain. I know in Orlando there's several of them, like these ethnic communities. Maybe they're Brazilian or wherever they were from, that they start buying houses together and in the neighborhood. And actually, it's kind of happened here in Plant City that a lot of these farm workers, like next to me, they've been at this farm for 30, 40 years, and they start buying homes together. And the next thing you know, they have like a little community. Now, I don't know if they know they have an intentional community, but that kind of interests me. And always, I always kind of look at the model of maybe you could talk about the Los Angeles, I guess it's the Eco Village, and maybe it's a co-housing. Could you maybe talk about that a little bit, Cynthia?
Sure. Yeah. LA Eco Village in Los Angeles, California is one of the oldest urban intentional communities, and they are a retrofit community. So not quite a co-housing. I'm not entirely sure if they have some units available for purchase. I think they're mostly on a rental basis. So that's really where intentional community living can get quite interesting in terms of finding a solution to our housing crisis and creating more affordable, accessible housing is not so much in the new developments of intentional communities, like the new build from the ground up model, because that can be expensive. There's some subsidies available to help, but I think it's really in the retrofit, taking existing spaces, filling an empty lot, finding ways for people instead of, oh, I need my own, my full space and my own like area. But no, how can I maybe band together with a group of neighbors or other single moms or other people who share my interest in this?
I do want to say I do love a single mom. That all single moms are like, not all, but like a lot of them are buying houses together and making these little, making like buying large houses and having and helping each other out with care and dinner and cleaning. And I'm here for that. That is awesome. Sorry, keep going.
No, I love it too. And that's the cool thing about community living. There's so many creative ways that people are coming up with for how to do housing differently, whether it's a housing cooperative, a community land trust, tiny house villages. These are some of the different models that can be pursued for more affordable living.
Yeah. John, do you have more questions?
Well, I just kind of wanted to add that about like raising children in community, kind of how important that is. We've really become a culture, and children have a lot of trouble. And something I ran across a long time ago, and I think it was at Twin Oaks. I went to a community. They used to have a community conference in the fall, August maybe. I forget what is it, Labor Day or, but anyhow, and I brought the thing back. I never really looked at it much, but it's called Hardwired Connect, and it's about authoritative communities, not authoritarian, but authoritative communities. And this was written by a bunch of different authors. I think about maybe 40 or 50 authors, mainly colleges, people that were wondering and trying to assess the problem with the children's today, like ADHD, all the problems that children have, children killing each other, suicide, and these different things, and they realized that it, like the thing says, that we're hardwired to connect, to be with people, and it's so important for children to have role models. And community kind of affords these things, and it can be anybody. It isn't like you need a college-trained psychologist or whatever, but to teach children morality, to teach children, the difference between right and wrong, and it's so important because in America especially, the divorce rate and the amount of children that are raised by single parents or no parents at all are just kind of sky high, and in this way, it's really so healthy for the children. And it was one little thing about that thing. They talk about rats, about here I am talking about rats, but that rats that they did experiments on that were, like there's, I guess rats are like human beings. There's a bunch that they say, oh, you're genetically going to be this way, and these rats were this way. Like they give them alcohol, and these certain type of rat would always go and drink and get drunk, and they followed the behavior. But when they took these little baby rats out, and like I say, they thought this was heredity, and they would take these rats out and they would put them in this caring, loving type, relationship where the mother and father rats, instead of being drunks and stuff, that they love these, that they actually changed, that these baby rats, their minds changed, the chemistry in their minds changed, and the baby rats that they raised were better rats. And
so I think that what you're saying is that, well, it's the same thing with having that loneliness epidemic. Like if you choose to raise your family with people that are surrounding you in a loving, trusting environment, you're putting your children off to like the best start. And I know that, I would love to have more people that are like around me that have that sort of trust with, because in reality, my kids don't listen to me very much, but when my neighbor says something, guaranteed they're going to listen to them a little bit better. So if we have that similar ideals and they have that love for my children as much, and I trust them, then it sets I feel like it sets your kids off to that better start. So there's definitely something to be said about that.
It takes a village.
It does. And so, John, I know that I know that you were throwing around the idea of starting an intentional community. So, Cynthia, do you help people start intentional communities? And what if somebody is interested in starting an intentional community? What are the steps? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so the first step is to learn more about the concept and ideally go visit a number of established communities and learn from what's out there. Who knows, along the way, you might find one that you decide you would like to join or live in for a period of time. And that's certainly a lot easier than trying to start a new community. That said, we need more communities in the world, and I'm always supportive of people who want to try to be a founder in that way, or even just create more community wherever they're living right now. I'm not saying that everyone needs to up and move to a new community. You can do more things wherever you're living to foster more social connection and cooperation.
Yeah, and then I'm sorry. So we had an email saying, well, let me see. Having lived in senior co-housing for the last 9 years with 2 artists, they have an opportunity to purchase 1-bedroom condo. So they are looking for options. They love your mission, and they filled out a form on your website, and that was from Jackie. And they mentioned that you now live in Vermont, and they want to know if you have a connection to the St. Petersburg area. And then there's another follow-up email that I wanted to do after that. So do you have a connection at all to St. Petersburg?
Not specifically. I have an online directory of intentional communities. That is one I've been privately curating over the years of doing this community matchmaking work and recommending different places to people. So I might need to reference that list to see.
I looked it up while you were talking. So there's 2 different ones, and this goes to Kitty's question as well. She wrote in where are the local ones, and so I found 100 Acre Woods in Pinellas Park, Kindred Village on Treasure Island. There was one, let me see, in Gainesville called Gainesville Co-Housing, and then a little bit farther away in St. Augustine called a Rogue River Eco Village Destination Resort. So it sounds like they're also a resort and co-housing intentional community.
Yeah, I can mention a few more in Florida, including one closer to you all, I think in Tampa.
Sure.
Harmony Terrace, that's a newer one that's getting started on 5 acres in North Tampa. There's another one near Tallahassee, which is a land cooperative, been around for a few decades. Mikosuki Land Co-op near Tallahassee. The one in Gainesville is a bit newer, but is, I think, really like a shining model of an established co-housing community in Florida. So yeah, there's a few here and there, and more that are starting up all the time.
John, are you still there? Do you have any more questions?
Yeah. And, kind of to your question to her, to me, I actually started my little trip towards community in 2000. I'm a young man, and I've been raised and lived here in the Tampa Bay area, and I kind of started off working for somebody, and I felt like I was being treated unfairly, and then I became an employer. I bought had a little garden shop and landscape business. And at that point, I became an owner, and I hired people, and I noticed that all of a sudden I became that person that I didn't like, like I was trying to take advantage of the workers, and then I ended up moving out here to Plant City. And then I thought, well, I'm just going to do this tree farm deal by myself. I bought the property in 1985. And I realized, well, man, this is really something missing here. And I don't know what it was, I really became interested in sustainability, and then I just happened to notice an ad about intentional communities, and it was the IC.org site, which is, I don't know exactly the Federation of Intentional Communities or whatever it was, but it was really interesting. And like I said, I went to Twin Oaks in 1999, and like Tina said, I'm sorry. That I tried to learn everything that I could about it. Like it was a big step. We'd already taken money out of our pocket. We bought the property. We were doing something, but I wanted to do something better, and I wanted to kind of open it up to other people. But it was always kind of a stumbling block. Was in successful communities, usually land is owned in common. And here I was with my wife, and we're thinking, well, we've been out here, and how can we do this? But as we gotten older, now it seems real easy because I really I don't like to pay taxes, but all I'm saying is that you have to learn a lot, and I think through the IC website and the communities directory, and of course through Cynthia's organization, there's a lot of information online about them, and there's a lot of books. And I read the book, Is It Utopia Yet? By Pat Kincaid.
So, John, you bring up a good point, and I would like I would like a chance, if you don't mind. So, Cynthia, do you mind if I jump on one of your points real fast?
Sure. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, so Cynthia, John brought up a good point where he said that a lot of the times the land is owned by a group of people. So is there ever intentional communities where the land is maintained ownership by one person and it's either leased or rented individually, where the person doesn't necessarily own the house, but they're a part of the intentional community?
There are two primary ways for how new communities get started. The first is through already having a group, already having the vision, the shared culture, the agreements, and then that group goes out and does a property search and buys the land. That can be a much longer and in some ways a more risky endeavor. The other way is what John is speaking to in his experience. Well, he wants a community and he has the land. And so now it's a matter of inviting new people in. So that can be a little faster, but there is then that power dynamic of one individual or a couple owning the land, and how do they make that work? Some communities make that work so long as it's really transparent and explicit that is the ownership and the financial structure. And at the end of the day, the owner has the final say because they're the one who is really holding that responsibility and that risk. A lot of communities get started that way, but then make the transition into collective ownership. That's actually how my community was founded. It was founded by one individual. She owned the land. She sold these different lots. And then over time, we transitioned into shared ownership. It was not an easy process necessarily, but we were really committed to making that happen. So it can look a variety of different ways. And not to say one is necessarily better than the other. I think just at the core, transparency is very important.
Absolutely.
Could I just mention maybe one other book is Creating a Life Together by Diana Leaf Christensen. And it's a really great resource about those kind of things, and of course, reading through it, I think that our route will be like a life estate, that when we die, that the land will end up in the community would end up with the property. But there is a lot of resources out there, and of course, there are local lawyers that kind of deal with that stuff, kind of community stuff and nonprofit stuff. But yes, there are a lot of different ways. It's just a matter of the human beings sitting down and talking And the thing is to have a defined mission. It's just like our radio station, the community radio station, and they have an impeccable mission statement. And you see what happened. We had this little fund drive a couple of weeks ago, and it's just like almost unbelievable. It was like a fairy tale, for this thing that was created, this community entity that was created by a bunch of people. Because they wanted to be non-commercial, they wanted to have free speech, and I think it did everything like that. Synergy of community is just really, I don't know, it's the only way we're going to get out of this mess that we're in. The way I feel, at least.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and I will echo, there are a lot of online resources on my website, communityfinders.com. I have multiple blog articles, a list of intentional community directories, including the one you mentioned, John, icu.org. I have a list of books related to intentional communities, and as well as a list of upcoming events, including, like you mentioned, the Twin Oaks Community Conference that happens every year, Labor Day weekend, and is also happening again this year.
And Cynthia, you mentioned some in Tampa, and I just got an email from Kitty. She wanted to know what the one in Tampa was called again. And is there, and that you also mentioned either a list or a map that people can reference to find one near you. Is that something that you have on your website or that you can recommend people use?
Yeah, there are a variety of maps. So if you want to find out, which map might be suited for you based on the kind of community and the location you're looking at, that would be available on my website. The community I mentioned in Tampa is called Harmony Terrace. It's just harmonyterrace.org. And I would encourage folks to go to communityfinders.com to see a list of other maps and directories. And there is a great one at the letter C.org. That's one good online map for the United States, especially.
You're listening to the Sustainable Living Show, broadcasting live from the studios of WMNF Tampa 88.5 FM. Our guest today is Cynthia Tina, talking about intentional communities. If you have a question, we have a few minutes left. Give us a call, 813-239-9663. Text us at 813-433-0885, or send us an email, dj@wmnf.org, and I'll read it on the air. So what is the process for joining intentional communities? I have a friend right now who is thinking about joining one, and the process for them is to rent one of their houses for 1 year to see if everyone gets along, and then everybody in the community votes him in or votes him out. So is that pretty typical?
It can be typical. Again, there's a variety of different ways that the membership process can look. I think it's good if a community has a slow process for deepening and connection and really seeing mutually, like hopefully he also thinks it's a good fit. It goes both ways, because sometimes you can rush into something and then realize it's not a fit. And then that's where some conflicts can lead to later. So,
and we do caller Chris. Welcome to the Sustainable Living Show. Chris, welcome to the Sustainable Living Show. We can't hear you, so maybe we can, if we lost you, give us a call back. Sorry to interrupt. So is there, and you mentioned, so we're talking about getting accepted in and doing the application. Is there a way, like how diverse are the intentional communities? Do you see like, is it representative of the larger community typically, or is that something that needs to be worked on?
So in my community, for example, because we're based on home ownership, and not only home ownership, you buy your little piece of land and then you build your house. So I've also been building my house for the last 5 years. And what our membership process looked like was coming to visit for the first time, taking a tour, joining a work party, and lending a hand in the garden, really getting to know each of the people in the community. And then at the point I was like, hey, I think this is a fit for me. That's when I submitted a formal application and wrote a letter basically why I wanted to join. I did a financial disclosure as well. Just a few other questions to really make sure that I was a good fit for the community. And of course, I was asking them a lot of questions too to find out if they were a fit for me. And then there was a meeting in which everyone voted, if you will, and said, yes, we think that this person is good. And then I had the opportunity to buy my piece of land and join. And that is quite typical for a community that has that sort of model. We don't have rental spaces available here, but if there was a community that was more on a rental basis, it might look like a trial period of renting for a few months or 6 months or a year before entering full membership.
And so you mentioned the financial disclosure. That's a great point. So are these houses owned by the intentional community? So you are buying it from them without a bank? So you have to show that you have income or finances, or is it still bank financed?
Most home purchases within intentional communities are bank financed. This is becoming a very popular mode of living. Like most co-housing communities have waiting lists of people who would like to join. So banks are becoming more and more comfortable and see that as a good investment. And if somebody has the means to buy outright, in my case, it was a little different because I've been building my house. So I was just buying the land outright. And then I've been embarking on building my house, which has been a lifelong dream and very difficult yet rewarding.
That's awesome. And so, Chris, it seems like you're back. Welcome to the Sustainable Living Show. We have a couple of minutes. Nope, still can't hear you, Chris. Maybe there's an issue.
Yep.
Oh, yep, I can hear you. Welcome to the Sustainable.
Great. Wonderful show. I just was hoping you could spend a couple of quick minutes talking specifically about the cost. I know it's wide-ranging and it may be a crass subject, but I guarantee you lots of listeners are listening to this great show thinking, I wonder if that's affordable or to what degree it is. If you have some specifics maybe about the places in Costa Rica or yours in New England, that would just give us a guideline. That would be really helpful of actual amounts of money that would cost to get into a situation. Thank you. I'll listen off the air.
Thanks for your call, Chris.
Yes, it is a good question. And I think the first thing I would say is depending on your financial situation, you can find a community that'll work with your situation. If you're looking for a rental, if you're looking for something affordable and maybe you qualify for subsidized housing of some form, there are intentional communities across the price spectrum. So I don't want to say a number and have people think, well, that's out of my price range, because it probably isn't, but you're going to want to be specific about what kind of community you join.
You know, it's funny because I think that the lowest is that I've ever heard of is free. There was a farm in Sarasota that you are allowed to pitch a tent if you volunteer hours. And I had a friend that lived there for 4 or 5 years. And he was a part of that intentional community. He lived in a tent. He worked in the garden for however many hours. And there's a lot of different setups, it seems.
Yeah, including, we've been mentioning a few times Twin Oaks. So that is an income sharing community where when you join, you have a job in the community and that's it. You live for free in exchange for working in the community. So it can be that low. I would say, most rentals, if you're renting like a room or a small home in a community, that could be between $5,000 to $1,000 to $2,000. So $500 to $2,000. So somewhere in that range. If you're looking at home purchase, again, it's going to really depend on whether you're in a coastal or more rural area.
Officially out of time. So thank you so much, Cynthia, for joining us on the Sustainable Living Show. I'll make sure to include all this information in the write-up. And I want to thank you, Sarah, for taking the call, Bill Grace for working the boards, Grace Benke for our website updates, and Miss Kitty Wallace for calling in with the events. It does take to build a community. If you enjoy our show, you want to keep us on the air, please donate at WNF.org and stay locked in for the next hour to hear Community Speaks with Mabili. I'm Tanja Vidovic, and you are listening to WMNF Tampa.